Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order at 6:05, according to the clock on the wall, which is a couple minutes fast. Now? There you go, we waited for you. So this is our March 28th RPC public draft review, finally. Let's take a roll call, and then we'll make other introductions, or I'll let everybody introduce themselves.
Do you want to just do roll call by introduction?
Sure. Let's start with Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Adamson. I am the Public Health Administrator for the McHenry County Department of Health.
Nancy Glissman, I live in Huntley, and I'm a commissioner.
Vern Sisson, I live near Wrangell, Illinois, and work up in Harvard, Illinois.
Michelle Thimius, I live in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and I'm also a commissioner.
Ellie Salazar, and I know it officially changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I live in Woodstock, and I am a commissioner.
Scott Hennings, I'm the Assistant Director of Transportation at McHenry County DOT.
I'm Perry Moy, and I'm a bartender at Mariano's.
Okay, so is that where we're going to have an
Afterwards.
party?
Exactly.
Okay.
They serve wine when you can grocery shop. What the heck?
Patricia Grant, I'm retired from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Now we really know. Mary Donna, retired. I'm also on the, what am I on? I'm on the ZBA as well.
I'm Charlie Eldridge. I'm also on the ZBA, and I'm a commissioner. I live in Richmond.
Carolyn Campbell, I live in Crystal Lake. I'm the County Board Liaison.
Mike Bueller, I live in Crystal Lake also, County Board Chairman, and just wanted to briefly say thank you to all of you for your hard work and commitment to this commission. It's been a long road, and especially you, Mary, for your leadership over, what is it, a year and a half now? Something like that, 2 years?
Almost
Time flies.
almost
We're
2.5.
having fun.
At 2.5, I will be done.
But there's been some challenges, but I think that's the way we get to good results many times. And thank you all for what your contributions are.
Yes, sir?
John Houseo with Houseo Levine.
So John Tresta with House of Levine.
Elliot Lewis with House of
Thank you very much. I think the next thing that we have is nobody's here to tell me.
Well, they're going to do an agenda. They went to the
Okay.
point so that you would have it.
Besides, if we have to vote, she has to write it down. So we will take a short recess.
Your buddies.
Well, I should have known.
Are these from you, Jen?
I'm sorry?
These are from you? Oh,
I
Charlie,
did
oh,
Christmas,
thank
you
you.
did Easter.
I was like, thank you.
That's
I think there's something.
chocolate.
Yeah, he just, I was like, oh.
There's a
I mean,
famous
this
chocolate
smells
shop
either. Yeah, honestly.
That's right.
It could be. It smells so amazing.
Sorry, I should have had a copy.
Thank you,
I should have made a copy. Okay, as long as nobody has the agenda in front of them, we need a motion to accept the agenda, approval of the agenda.
So
moved.
Perry Moy, Michelle Thimius. All in favor?
Aye.
And approval of the minutes from the February 22nd meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any dissensions? No? Let's go ahead and approve the minutes. And Garrett,
Good evening.
please introduce yourself.
I'm Garrett. Hi. Garrett Anderson from Woodstock.
Generally known as, no. Okay, this is Chairman's comment. It's a breath. We've done a lot of work, especially in the last year and full year and up till now to get this far. If you haven't seen it already, it's 180 pages of, I believe, very well written, very well put together, that kept everything close to home, so we didn't have pictures of Naperville's. We didn't have, there's some things, but we kept it very simple, and I think the language was done in such a way that I had asked all through this time to say, please don't use the techie language, we need to know, because so many people, even we know now what agrivoltaics are, without spitting it out. But most people wouldn't know what they were unless they had a glossary. We will have a glossary, by the way. So it's nice to know that, and I worked at making sure everybody had enough background so that you could make have good input, that it wasn't just going over your head or just sitting here without. I think Randy Zaleski is the only one who's not here, Renee?
TJ.
And TJ.
And TJ are not here. But they were always, everybody read their stuff, everybody gave whatever input they could at the time. And I know that even though you might not have written down your comments, they were always welcome, as we will welcome them tonight too. I'm going to leave it now to public comment. Do we have any public? No public. Isn't that, nobody ever comes to see us do anything unless they're ticked off. Kind of, but,
Yes, that's
so
true.
we're good. I like it this way. So since we have no old business, we're going to hand this over to Mr. Hausiel and review and comment on the draft.
Yep.
Please. I
All right.
give the floor to you.
Thank you again. This is a good meeting to be at because this is the last time this group will be meeting to review this, right? And then you hand off the football to the next person who's going to carry it.
As long as the sun shines and.
That's exactly right. I think the lion's share of the lifting was done at our last meeting.
Yes.
Where we went through 8+ chapters, a lot of content in detail. We took back all your feedback, we incorporated those changes. What you hadn't seen at the last one was the first 3 chapters, sort of the introduction, profile, and the vision, the goals, that sort of piece. So we're gonna go through that very quickly, just to sort of see if you have any comments to revise it. The other remaining chapters you've already seen, we've incorporated your comments. We'll go through very briefly what changes we made based off of your feedback. And then we can open it up to any comments, revisions, tweaking before it sort of gets officially recommended on for public hearing. We don't have the date for the public hearing of the open house scheduled yet, or do we? I don't think we do. Okay, I didn't think.
Not yet. We wanted to make sure we had everything done tonight
That's what I thought, yep.
in order to be able to
To be
do
ready
that.
for that, yep. So real quickly, this is the team that worked on the project, as you all know. Really a great team of professionals, really working on different aspects of the community. So Hausiel Levine was the lead consultancy working on this. Geocentech really worked on some of the environmental solutions in the land, worked on a lot of the environmental. Clova worked on transportation, and McGuire Gillespie worked on historic preservation. MIA is an architecture firm. So we worked with all of these consultants on different projects in the past, but it was really nice to bring them into this project as one team. Like I said, when we went through this last time, the challenge was not generating good content. The challenge was going through so much good content and really getting it concisely pulled together. I think you probably got more insight on green infrastructure and water and other sorts of uses than county plans that focus just on that. So I think some of your chapters on these topics are more robustly worded and insightful than entire studies done just on those things. So the team did a fantastic job. So, and we went over that most of that last time. So we'll go over the process real quickly, and then we'll review some of the public draft, the 3 chapters you haven't seen yet, your comments from before, and then go after next steps. So again, real quickly, it's been about an 18+ month process, and emphasis on the plus. It's funny, you always sort of kid yourself if at the beginning of a process where you engage the public to think you'll know over 18 months exactly how things are going to play out, because it often does not play out that way. But again, any planning process is really 3 things. Where are we right now? Where do we want to go? What do we have to do to get there? These are the 7 different pieces of that. And it's, again, initiation, public stakeholder engagement, existing conditions, visioning, future growth scenario modeling, which we did. That was a pretty important part of this study. A lot of communities, and a lot of counties don't do that, but it really informs sort of a data-driven approach to planning. So it's not anecdotal or hearsay, but it's more evidenced and data-driven. And it's much more defendable, it's much more accurate, and it's easier to generate policy off of information than conjecture. So that step 5 is really important. 6 then was based off of all of that preliminary plans, and then 7 is pulling this all together into a final document and adoption. So where we are right now in all of this, I'm pleased to say, is we're on step 7, which is where we are reviewing the final draft, and then the next step will be to take it through to public hearing and a county-wide open house prior to the public hearing. So the public draft review, these are the 13 chapters. The chapters you did not see last time were 1, 2, and 3. I don't know if we reviewed 13 last time either, the implementation chapter. I don't think we did. So those are the 4 chapters that are new.
John, like we shared the entire draft
Yep.
prior to this meeting, so I think everyone has the 3 chapters, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This presentation basically goes over kind of the revisions.
Right, of what we've done.
From them.
So again, the first chapter is, the first part of this is introduction, and the introduction is crucial for a few things. One, it sort of sets the table for what the document is people are about to get into, but it underscores what a comprehensive plan is, why a comprehensive plan is undertaken, and it goes over the process by which it was developed and how the comprehensive plan is intended to be used. Both sort of statutorily, why it exists, as well as how the county ought to be using this going forward. So some of the chapter edits we've done to this is we've updated the regional context map. We cleaned up in some of the typos and stuff that we received from the time you guys got the draft. But that's and I guess we'll just go through this chapter at a time. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments, edits, amendments they want, or anything they want to discuss on the introduction? It's pretty straightforward. I want to do this just chapter at a time.
I missed something in my chairman's comments.
Okay, good, go ahead, go ahead.
As we've discussed over this last year and a half, or however long we've been actually pounding this out, there are a lot of people, we had diverse people and diverse ideas.
Right.
And there, so many ideas came to the table that were good ideas, and some of them we had to leave on the table because, well, 180 pages is a lot of reading anyway. Right. And the way I've always heard it is that as long as everybody gets something of what they want, and there's something left on the table, then we have a good plan. If somebody got everything they wanted and it meant somebody else didn't get what they wanted, it's not going to work. So we've worked on making it coordinated and to make it work, and I took in everybody's information. Thank you, I'm sorry.
No, that's good, and what we were able to, I think, do it really well as part of this process and with this group was to achieve a pretty high level of consensus. There were very few things where people, it was sort of a knockdown, drag out, where there was a real difference of opinion. There was some minor wordsmithing, some tweaking, but there was no sort of fundamental difference of opinion on how to begin to go after or to address things that were viewed as being priorities for the county. So the consensus we achieved throughout the entire process and with this group was really very high. So again, just to reiterate before we go on to the next one, the feedback we got from the introductory chapter, once you reviewed it, we got some feedback, was we updated the context map and we addressed a few typos. There were no other comments. But before we go on to the next chapter, did anybody have anything in the introductory chapter that they reviewed they wanted to be revisited? There was just a little feedback on this, that's it. Community profile, the reason we do this, and sometimes it's called an existing conditions analysis, but we like the community profile. It's important that, let's say, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, someone wonders what was going on in the county at the time the plan was created. And it's important to know, looking back, to say like, boy, this is a snapshot. This was the profile of what was going on. These were the considerations that were made. This was the market, this was the demographic, this was the existing land use. These are the transportation considerations. but it's important to document as part of a process and a product before you start saying, again, that where do we want to go and how do we get there, that where are we right now? That is the community profile, and it is the entire county, and it looks at a lot of different things: market, demographic, transportation, environmental, water, land use, community and public facilities, and it looks at a lot of things. So it's not a chapter that contains recommendations or visionary or aspirational statements. It is a snapshot, if you will, of conditions, influences, and trends within the county at the time the process was undertaken.
The only thing that, after reviewing the community profile, the definition of unincorporated and municipality, I think there needs to be a line in that, because constituents have a confusion of, I live in Crystal Lake, but is that in McHenry County? Or if I live in unincorporated, there's a confusion.
Okay.
And how do we bring that together, or is there some verbiage that we can try to encompass that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we can clean that up. And again, Ally and Sue John are over there, and they'll be marking things up and taking notes. So I think it's an easy clarification, but it's a good point. Because even if you live in Woodstock proper or Huntley, let's say, or Crystal Lake, even if you live within that municipality, you still live in McHenry County.
Exactly.
But you're not in unincorporated McHenry County, you are an incorporated municipality.
And
So-
this plan encompasses the whole county.
Correct. But it doesn't supersede the jurisdictional authority of a municipality.
Exactly, and that's
So-
what, the profile doesn't go into that, we don't want it to go into
Right,
that.
that's a real good point, so we can clarify that and add that into it, that's a good point. The other comments we got was to upload the map.social map, which we've done, made adjustments to some of the chapter layout issues, fixed a few typos, and moved the plan, vision, and themes into chapter 3, which we did. So again, nothing of substance, just sort of a little bit of housekeeping stuff. I think your addition though is a real good one. Sometimes when we work on these, whether it's you're a consultant, staff, or the committee, we're pretty close to it, right? And sometimes we assume a level of literacy around this that some people don't have. So we need to sort of step back. It's the same reason we're doing the glossary, right, Mary? And so sometimes you have to step back and provide something that you might think is obvious that a layman does not know about. So you can't assume. So that's a real good addition. We can do that. Anybody else have any amendments to the profile? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I read all 180 pages. Still doesn't look to me like any of the issues related to how you would get rid of the debris related to solar farms and wind farms would be gotten rid of. None of that has been addressed. The other thing is recycling, and I'm talking about returnable bottles.
Okay.
Like beer bottles
Yep.
and so forth, like we used to have not that long ago. And that needs to all return again, because I'll tell you what, I live in Bull Valley, and it's like a garbage valley, we might as well call it, you know, because the people just come and throw crap all over. And every single year, we have to go out, us personal people, not any company, and pick up people's disgusting stuff.
Right.
And so that is another thing, those things haven't been addressed. And so as the communities, such as Woodstock and others, they want to develop, they want to do this, they want to do that, which is all stupid, but they want to develop it. Well, I think they ought to be consulting with communities around them, and perhaps through their council of governments or something. That's never been discussed. I've brought that up before. The council of governments is very important, so that there is a discussion where they can all get their heads together on this, and how are we going to handle this when yet another fast food joint wants to come in, and they come along Country Club Hills Road and throw stuff out, and then they head on down Queen Anne's and out on Bull Valley Road out to the hospital and so forth. So that's another thing, that hasn't been addressed at all. The other thing is, and this has kind of come more to a punch now, since we actually started, all this DIE stuff, DIE stuff, and also this housing, trying to get low-income housing in. This is maybe not, I'm gonna put this as gracefully as possible.
Oh, you said DI, you meant DEI.
DEI.
Okay, all right.
Well, I prefer to call it DIE
Okay.
because of religious reasons. Anyway, where was I? Low-income housing. Not every community needs or should have low-income housing. And so therefore, when you're talking about that, there may be some communities that want to do that and are interested in that, but what we've seen before our very eyes over the last month or two is they say they do, but they really don't. And that has been over the last couple of months. And so let's be truthful about what we want in McHenry County. Just exactly how much low-income housing and how intense the housing should be, because that is going to be very, very important, especially with our water issues. And because don't ever forget that those are very, very intertwined. And also, this crazy stuff on Route 47, where here they are building a traffic center there on 47. After they're widening it to 100 lanes, what do? Stick in a filling station. I assume that it's going to be for electric cars or something. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but.
Well, okay, so let me real quick. So those are, so based on my notes, I got 6 different points. So I'm just gonna take these one at a time. They don't have a place of amendment in the community profile chapter, but I wanna make sure that when we get to the other chapters, if we wanna bring these up again. So one of them was the remnants of infrastructure for solar. If the solar fields go away, what happens to the remnant? We may be able to put something like that, if appropriate, into the green infrastructure section about, if a, pardon?
Decommissioning.
Yeah, decommissioning, right. So we can put a decommissioning thing in the energy chapter, the energy infrastructure chapter. The other one was about coordination of governments, municipalities, and the county when development and or other plans are considered, just sort of a cooperative or a courtesy sort of approach to development as opposed to doing things without coordination or at least communication. That intergovernmental coordination and communication is already addressed in several different places. If we think it needs to be augmented when we get to that section, let us know. But that need to coordinate development and the need for intergovernmental cooperation at multiple levels, the state, the county, and the municipalities within the county is several places in the plan. We do talk about housing, but this plan does not dictate the amount or the location, or does it require municipalities to provide senior housing, or affordable housing. It talks about providing a range of housing type and product, so that collectively across the county, there is a mix of different type of housing that is available at different price points and at different types, whether it be single family or townhomes or something else, to meet collectively the need of the population across the entire spectrum of the county. But it doesn't dictate the amount, intensity, or location or requirement for affordable housing. DEI is mentioned in here a couple of different places, and if it comes up, if we want to address the wording of it, we can. Traffic, there's a whole chapter on transportation, so I don't know exactly what aspect of that when you talk about traffic on 47, but KLOA looked at traffic and transportation, bike, ped, transit, and vehicular across the entire county. So when we get to that chapter, and that is chapter 8, If there's anything we want to revise, that's the place to revisit it. So those are all the 6 different points that I heard you say. Some are addressed, some may not be. Some I think are very easily addressed, others we may need more discussion on when we get to that point in the chapter, so.
Well, I mean, I've heard, I've just been noticing over the last month or two now where you have an awful lot of changes that are going on. And what I'm seeing is we're falling behind. In other words, we're dragging up behind the wagon here with what we're doing, whereas we ought to be looking ahead. And instead, we're still talking about electric cars and electric vehicles. That's not gonna happen. Let's face it, it's not gonna happen. And you've also got all of these other ideas about solar. That's not gonna happen either without a tremendous amount of money being spent. More sensible is to encourage people to individually have solar on their own homes, which we actually were heading in that direction during the Carter administration in the 70s. We were heading for doing that. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were doing that back then. Now it's, and then it went by the wayside. And so now here we are with this idea of these farms, they call farms, wind turbine farms and your solar farms, which is just a way of twisting words is all it is, word twist. So I'm just saying that to me, it looks like we're falling behind. We're over the last few months, we have begun to fall behind. What we're seeing here is, for example, these communities that are trying to find housing for people is very, very difficult. And nobody wants it. And the first thing they do is come to the federal government with their hand out.
Yeah. Different part of conversation, because housing is generally going to be within municipalities, so we don't have that kind of.
Right, as long as it stays within.
But that's not, but we are working on what the land plan is to coordinate with them at some point, but we can't dictate to them. And what we can do, I think, is what we're trying to do. And as far as some of the other things, I think one way to take care of some of that, especially the garbage patrols, we can start advancing things and having groups together who are willing to do the roads like we talked about here. Everything is so far away and it's hard to do. I've lived in communities where I walked the streets when I'm walking the dog to get bags. Some of the stuff around here I need to do as well. But yeah, it's right. You're talking about personal stuff, but this is about all we can do within the unincorporated area of McHenry County. So even though we're talking about it, we're touching on it. We aren't dictating to the cities, or we're talking about that. But in the meantime,
yep,
I'd like to give Michelle a second to talk to.
Just one other thing. There's land that has come up that is good-sized parcels of land that have been hay ground. And how often have I said, you save hay ground? You've got to have hay ground for 1,000 reasons. Ask any of the horse farms around here. You've got to save your hay ground. This hay ground you shouldn't be looking at as, oh, here's a possible subdivision for estate zoning. No.
But we aren't, because it's unincorporated areas that we're talking about.
This is unincorporated.
Yeah, and we aren't building houses on those. We're not, this whole plan says keep everything towards the cities and coordinate and have less and more. That's why you have some of the maps that you have that shows what we're taking out of other places so that it can be in agriculture, to have the population set up so that it's not pie in the sky and we're gonna have 400,000 people, it's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen for a long time. And by that time, it'll be the next commission. But as far as the farmers know, if the farmers can't get it into their heads that they need the hay to sell, to do something, we can't dictate to them. So we have to work on that otherwise.
And agriculture
And we can do
is,
something after
yeah.
this is done to get
Right.
groups together to focus on those, have focus groups for that.
and other than just, as opposed to just having a mention or a passing about the importance of agriculture, it is one of the most prioritized chapters in this plan, the importance of maintaining, prioritizing, protecting, and valuing the agricultural resources of the county. So it's not even something that's addressed just in passing. It got a lot of emphasis and prioritization with its own chapter and a series of objectives. So you're right about sort of identifying those agricultural values and trying to protect those areas, and that is in this document.
Michelle?
Yeah, I just had some questions about the plan themes, are we on that section?
We can get to that section. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just one question / comment. The photograph that's used on the profile opening is of the McHenry County Fair, which is,
Here?
yes, which is great, but if you look closely, it's kind of a dilapidated sign, and I wasn't sure if that was intentional, is that,
I noticed it too.
you know, I mean, you talk about character, and I thought it was cute. Right, so I just want to make sure, like, the intention or the thought is there about even some of the graphics and what that says, or what are we communicating, or?
And that's a good point, and we swapped out several photographs based off of this committee's specific recommendations at our last meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was not.
Okay, yeah, so we swapped out, I can't even think of how many photos.
No, this hasn't been discussed.
But we swapped out, like Mary said, it was a bunch, at the request of different members for different reasons. If there is a photograph in here the committee wants swapped, in addition to the ones we already have, that's fine, just let us know what they'd rather see a picture of and we'll swap it out, that's fine. So if you think this captures the character and has some quaintness and some appeal of sort of the rural whatever, that's great, we'll leave it in. If you think it needs to be something else, it can be something else, just let us know. So. But no, anything is fair game, it's not, again, so you said.
I was just curious, like,
Yes.
you know, when you think about images and what it provokes, if it's intentional, I think it's great, right?
Yeah.
The character, it's a big part of the
Yeah,
county.
you bet it is, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, but to your point, are the graphics or photos and stuff fair game? You
Yes.
bet, absolutely, yes. If there's something you want changed, let us know. Yep.
Michelle, please.
If we're ready for the plan themes.
Yeah, so I'm going to that, boom, right here, vision and themes, yeah.
So we had done a lot of like wordsmithing around the specific theme titles, specifically in July of last year, and we had decided that we wanted sustainability to be climate resilience and environmental sustainability. We wanted public health to be a little bit broader and be quality of life, and then keeping the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece. And I was just curious if there's a reason why those weren't incorporated. I know that there was, you know, a mandate from the board that had specifically these theme titles, and there was some conversation about needing to go back to see if we could change the theme titles in that regard, and just wanted to bring that back up.
Yeah, so my understanding is that after discussion, this is where the committee landed, was on these three. If there is a desire to amend them, we can have that discussion. It doesn't have to be these from our perspective. I think these are appropriate, and I think it reflects the tenor of the discussion. And I think the way they are characterized narratively underneath as they appear throughout the document captures sort of the spirit of what it is the county is emphasizing. But if the wording needs to be tweaked at the committee's direction or discretion, we can do that, so.
Yeah, we spent a whole meeting talking about it, like you remember, and we landed on those names that I listed off, and so if we want to stick with whatever's in here, like that's fine, but that's not what we discussed.
Well, and I think the content of the themes is fine. We really spent the most time on what the title, so I mean, if we're all still fine with what we decided on, the content still will match throughout.
Correct.
The
Yeah,
themes.
100%. Yep.
It's just the titles of
And
Other
you want to
ones.
read off the titles that you had to see if the committee wants it? If the committee wants it, we can go, I mean, again, it's not up to us, so whatever you guys direct us to do, we can do, so. But
Yeah.
we want to change the wording, so.
Let's go with the first thing. It currently says
Sustainability.
sustainability, and what do we want it to say?
Well, we had
Or what do
talked
you
about, climate resilience and environmental sustainability because the resiliency piece was important as well as the sustainability. And I don't know if you remember any more to that conversation, but I
just remember it was, sustainability is such a common
But
word.
how about sustainability/resilience? If you start making those.
Sentences.
Yeah, I mean, it can be shorter. I think resilience is important though,
Right.
so.
And
Agree.
I don't
It's a good
disagree, but if you have sustainability/resilience, it's the theme that says, okay, what are we gonna talk about?
Sure.
The second one is, you went to.
well, the second one, making
longer.
public health a little bit broader and saying quality of life.
Okay,
Here's my only pushback on quality of life. You talk about sustainability being broad application. Quality of life is school, it is local restaurants, it is sense of place, it is community engagement and empowerment. I mean, quality of life is measured by, there's about 23 different recognized quality of life indicators. Health is one piece. So if you go into quality, I would even, quality of life could be the reason we're approaching sustainability, public health, and equity is so we have a robust quality of life. So to me, quality of life isn't a category, it's an umbrella objective. So that would be my only clause about trying to lump in quality of life with public health. Public health is one little piece of good quality of life. So
I
that'd be.
disagree, public health is a big piece.
Well, it's a big piece. I guess we'll agree on this, it's one piece, right? It's not the same as. So to say public health/quality of life, quality of life means,
Yeah, I just,
So-
from my perspective.
I think sustainability/resiliency or sustainability/resilient is a good solution.
so what I wanna do is, can somebody is that decent to you, Michelle?
I don't remember feeling strongly about that one, but I know we had discussed it and
Okay.
landed on quality of life,
So
those are okay.
if somebody would make a motion to accept a sustainability/resilience,
So move.
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Well, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Not to get sustainability and resiliency or resilience?
Resilience.
Resilience.
Well, then it would be sustainable and resilient.
Yeah, resiliency.
Grammatically, it should be resiliency, that's the way I think it
Okay,
should be.
that's
So
fine.
I think it should be sustainability/resiliency.
Sustain, resilient, whatever, however that makes
Yeah.
it work.
Or and.
Is there any,
Okay. I was just gonna add, so it sounds like though, do you then have to add to the narrative to explain some of the climate resilience, like, does that need to be called out specifically?
I think, I mean, at least what I remember from our discussion last time is like, we're already kind of touching on being resilient. So I mean, if we need to call it out specifically, we could, but I think it's just, we already are talking about resiliency
and I
throughout
think
the
if
whole
we
thing.
make it too long or just two, it's going to start messing around with people's heads on trying to figure out how the little icons work. I want people to read it and say, okay, I understand, and when they see it, if they need to, they can go back. But, you're gonna see a green leaf, you're gonna see health, and you're going to see the little guys on the.
We can go through that paragraph and see if we would do a little bit of text amendment to make sure that resiliency isn't just an afterthought, but it is diligently sort of, although concisely addressed, so it's not just assumed to be part of sustainability. It's a little bit different, it's
That's what I
related.
think it is.
So I guess with your direction, we'll go back and we'll make a little bit of amendment to that paragraph so that it is correct,
Okay.
all right?
As long as we vote on whether or not to go with sustainability and resiliency. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, then please do what you need to do to,
We'll change the title of the theme and make any appropriate amendment to the text on this page to appropriately include resilience.
okay. And then public health will turn into, are you gonna keep the icon if it's with the Red Cross, the opposite of Red Cross? No.
I was just being a cheerleader for.
Oh, okay. So public health, but you wanted to add something, you thought that we had talked about changing that to something else?
We did. We talked about changing it to quality of life, but I think there's a good point that significantly broadens it. So like, I'm fine leaving it at public health if others are as well. I just didn't.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just a thought, what about public health and wellness?
That's exactly what I was,
I like that.
That's exactly what I was gonna suggest, so. Wellness includes a lot more than just sort of a singular division or interpretation of health. So to me, public health and wellness is exactly what it is.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
Let's start again. Who wants to make that motion?
So moved.
No, I'm just kidding.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No. Go ahead and knock your socks off on that one. Now we get to what? Diversity,
Equity and inclusion.
equity and inclusion.
No, we did not change
No,
that title.
we went back and forth on what we could do, and I think we need to leave it that way because it is the theme du jour. It is what people are talking about now in general. What we have to do is make sure that it's understood in a way that does not sound like, tell me the word I'm trying to use.
Partisan.
There you go. Okay, because we are doing all of these things. It's all there anyway. It's been there since Carter. It's been there since Lincoln, for goodness sake. When we really get down to it, if we're talking about doing things and including people, that's where they get, it's the wording.
It's a concept that is now.
The wording.
It's a concept that is now, has a term applied to it that is readily identifiable, is all it is. It's different people talk about it in different ways over the years, and somebody labeled it this way and it stuck. So when you say it, people aren't wondering what you're talking about, everybody knows. It's a now sort of a commonality of idea that's been around, like you said, for forever, but now it is identifiable as a thing. And that's, it's nothing new, it's identified now as a way that is consistent.
And it is cliche-ish. I mean, this is like the modern new way of dictating what that all is, but it's explained so well in there. I don't think it needs to be changed. And, you know, this goes to the county board, and if they're going to change something, I don't have anything to say, but I think it should stay DEI for now. And that's not DEI, it's just DEI. I know what you were trying to do.
So consensus on those three, right?
Well, we didn't say. Is leaving it DEI okay?
Yes.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Thank you. And now, all in favor?
Aye.
All against? No? Okay.
Consensus.
We're good.
I love it. All right.
I have one thing.
Go ahead.
Just
It's
one
not with
thing.
the title, it's in the definition. We've been talking about this a lot at work lately, and so that's kind of what brought it up to me. We say that, you know, a place, where is it? Okay, the county will be known for fairness and inclusion. Fairness is like kind of a tricky word to use there because the concept of fairness is very subjective, you know, and so what seems fair to me might not be fair to you or you. And so I found a definition on the University of Iowa's website that I can send to you. And just that it like kind of clarifies what the equity piece means a little bit more.
Okay.
So just if we could,
Consider
change
that.
wording a little bit.
Is it too long to read?
I can read it. So equity is different than equality in that equality implies treating everyone as if their experiences are exactly the same. Being equitable means acknowledging and addressing structural inequities, historic and current, that advantage some and disadvantage others.
So we'll take a look at equal versus equitable. Okay. You guys mark that down? Okay. All right, good. Yes.
Perry?
Let's go back to the,
No, this train goes
To the bunnies, to the chocolate
back to the
bunnies.
vision statement, and I pose a question to this committee on the second paragraph. McHenry County.
The vision statement?
The vision statement, and I'll read it to you. McHenry County will offer abundant, affordable housing for its residents, and Housing will be available in many different formats, from mixed use to townhouse and apartment complexes. That's the statement. I'm proposing to this committee a version that would say McHenry County will offer abundant, instead of affordable, obtainable housing.
Attainable.
Okay, for its residents. Housing will be available in many different formats, from mixed use to townhouse to apartment complex and public assisted.
Yeah, that's the bullet that I was, if you look behind you on the screen, that, or right there, that's the one your comment was up there. So that's a change that we've made, and we wanted to bring that up to the entire committee. So we agree, and for a couple of reasons. One is affordable has legal definitions.
Exactly.
Okay, so in the state of Illinois, affordable housing legally means something.
Yes.
And in other states, affordable means something else. So to say that, so the common, a increasingly more common approach in planning and in communities is to say attainable housing. Then as a subset of that, if you want to get into affordable, you can, but workforce housing is attainable. It not necessarily meets the legal definition of affordable through HUD or the state. So we put it up there, we've made the change, we think it's a very good change.
It is a good change. Because it's not as overused either. Affordable housing has been used so often too, that that's a better, a nice way of saying.
And what does the committee feel about and publicly assisted?
Well, do we mention it frequently in the
Do you do
plan?
much in housing?
Well, this is a part of our vision statement.
Well, right, but the vision should match what we present throughout the rest of the.
Well, I don't think that public assistance in housing is necessarily a goal. It's a tool that we may wish to use to achieve a goal.
Yeah, that's well stated. I don't think it's part of a vision. Your vision is to have attainable housing.
Yes.
Right, in different ways, in different places of the county. But to say that in order to deliver that, you may need to, or a community may need to consider a level of assistance or whatever, that's not a vision, that's sort of a tactic, or that is a means, an action or a tool that you could be used. So I don't know that that would be in the vision. I think this should be in the vision. So I would agree with what you said, yeah.
So wait, so where are you now in addressing Perry's?
We're good with everything except the very last part about subsidized
Correct.
housing. And I don't think that we already have the housing authority working on that anyway for those who need assistance, and there are VASH vouchers for veterans. And there's already a
Framework?
yes, to be able to do that. So what we're saying is, because attainable, I know my kids just bought a place in Seattle for $500,000 that I wouldn't spend $200,000 here. I mean, it's just, what does it bear? And for here, that can change over years too. That's why you say attainable. Because if you're a working person, you can attain something different than a non-working person can. That's kind of like going with the workforce board, assist people to go to MCC, get an education, get a job, and do this. But it's not necessarily part of this thing. So I will bring it up to everybody. Do you want to include your
Public assisted.
public assisted housing? Make a motion?
Oh, I can't make a motion. I had a.
Okay.
I have a comment too.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna go to motion first, because then we can have discussion. Anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion.
Make a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Yeah,
Michelle is seconding.
I tend to agree that it doesn't fit in the vision, but it should be specifically enumerated in the housing section, that we see, publicly supported housing as a means to that end.
Okay.
In some cases.
But in
a
the
means to
housing
the end.
section.
But in the housing section, but what else did you say?
That publicly supported housing is a means to attainable housing for some people, and we see that
And
as
who's-
fitting in this section.
And who is supposed to, okay, like she said how her kids bought a house for $500,000 in Seattle. My kids just bought a place in Northern California for $1,450,000. And I'm telling you, if that were around here, that would be maybe a $900,000 house. That's how much housing is. I think, boy, I don't know. I don't know if I even touch housing anymore with a 10-foot pole because you just don't know what's going to happen with it anymore. It's so wild.
I just want to say real quick, the motion was to amend the vision. So what you said was that even though you seconded the motion.
Which is fine, for discussion purposes.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, so the motion is to change the vision. You're saying not to change the vision, but to change it in the housing section.
If we need to, I haven't finished reading that
Okay,
section to
okay.
see if it's in there, but if we need to.
Melissa?
So I'm gonna throw another little something into the mix. So when I look at that, we will offer abundant affordable housing, or let's say it's changed to we'll offer abundant attainable housing. From a vision standpoint, perhaps the commission would consider like offer quality attainable housing or something, right? Like if we have attainable housing, what is the condition of that housing, right? Thinking that ideally we want conditions to be places where people can be healthy, places where, so just as.
But it's also fluid. If we start getting into the more things that you say, the more things you have to support, or you have to be able to explain, or you have to go. There's got to be something in there where you aren't taking advantage of that and saying, we will have the best that we can do, but Library of Congress started with a book, and now we have buildings that say what you can and can't do. So it's fluid. It all is fluid. So you can discuss it, but quite frankly,
we do have standards in the county and what kind of housing
they're
people can live
already
in.
there.
And so,
It's a matter of being
that.
able to, and that's education. That's education on the county's part to make sure people know that there are things that we want to do, that Housing Authority is there for a reason, that Workforce Board works with McHenry County College, that what's actually going out to people now, what kind of jobs are there to get so that you can attain that housing, so that you can do this, and this, and this. So at the moment, I'm going to call the question and say, how many people are in favor of making the change? Let's change.
And say the change.
Publicly supported housing.
In the vision statement.
In the vision statement.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody for it? Any nays? Nay, okay. We're going to pass on that one for now, use it in another section, not just in the vision
So the
statement.
vision statement, a clarification, Madam Chairman, McHenry, the sentence that I'm stating will remain the same, with affordable and not obtainable.
No, it's unattainable, we're just publicly
But the public assistant, it will come in any form, public assistant will not be in it.
Correct.
Correct, not in the vision
Okay.
division.
Well, my vote is in favor of that, so.
Right, okay.
Okay, so
That's fine.
One against whatever you got.
That's fine.
Okay,
That's fine.
I want that on the record.
That's why I'm taking these matters to vote now, so that we know where everybody stands on what. We can't, like I said, we can't all have everything that we want.
Okay.
Can't, Go ahead.
So before we go on to the next one, just to recap, we made a few revisions to the themes based off a discussion. We made your suggested change to the vision from affordable to attainable, but we're not making the change to include subsidy or assistance. The next is land use and development. This was discussed in detail again at our last meeting. Land use and development is really sort of the core of comprehensive planning traditionally. As land use. So some of the edits that we've made is we moved land use and development to chapter 4. We made adjustments to the chapter layout. Again, none of this is content or substantive, it's just design. Emphasize the conservation in the introduction. This was something that came out of the last, remember we talked about, should it be called land use and conservation or conservation land use? And so we left the title the same, but we emphasized that more strongly based on this discussion in the introduction. And we addressed any additional text revisions that were very minor, sort of tweaks or typos or Scrivener's errors. So it was really some formatting issues. The only substantive thing was a reinforced emphasis of conservation in the introductory section of it, based on a conversation. Okay.
Great new photos on that, by the way.
Pardon?
I like the new photos.
Oh, good, thanks. Well, you might pat yourselves on the back because you guys gave us direction on the photos. That's good, that's good. All right, again, 5 is agricultural resources. Again, we made tweaks to the layouts. We moved agricultural resources to chapter 5. Again, we shifted some of the chapters on. We revised objective 2.1, and we updated the conservation easement map to be correct. So John, can you speak to the revised objective 2.1?
While he's looking for that, can I
Absolutely.
point out something before we can? That conservation easement map needs a source.
It needs a source, okay?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that
Came from.
came from.
Okay. Ally, did you get that? Okay.
I think I know what the 2.1 was. I was dying on the hill of native plants, not.
Yes,
Oh,
that's-
I know it's probably.
There you go, there you go.
It's a good hill to die on.
I'm gonna die.
It's
Okay.
important.
So it was-
Specifically changed the text from deep rooted to native.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Look at that, look at that.
There you go. I can die on the
I
hill.
wanted to get the word.
Good recall.
Good
Okay, good, that's
advocating.
good. And we'll get a source reference for the easement map, okay?
That's good.
All right. The next one is housing. And again, I know we're going through these quickly, but we went through them over the course of, I think, 3 hours last month and had a lot of discussion. So there were only a few things that were changed. Again, minor adjustments to the chapter layout and then revised objectives. Sujan, you're going to be on again, 1.5, 1.7, 2.3, and 3.2. And then this is where we might want to revise the inclusion of the text regarding that we just had about the vision statement. If we're going to do that about housing, it's going to go somewhere in this chapter. So, but Sujan, do you want to go over the revised objectives?
Yeah, so the revisions include tweaking the text to talk about the benefits of ADU in all land uses rather than just focusing on ag. Build on the text to support attainable housing, need to stress more on accessibility. And then 2.3 and 3.2 comment needed to be tied together. So
it's referenced in the text, you can see in 3.2
Right.
as addressed in
2.3.
objective 2.3.
Okay.
So they cross-reference?
Yeah.
Objective 3.2 can mention infill development. So that's been addressed.
And are you going to change the, where you use the term affordable housing?
To attain.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just read that, yeah. Yes, that'll be a universal.
Okay, good.
Now, this is where, and we'll have to go through to find the appropriate place to look for including, what was the term, was it not subsidized, what was it? Was it?
Public assisted.
Public assisted, in terms of like, as one of the types of housing, right?
There's a support affordable or attainable housing in 1.7 that might fit in.
1.7, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's where we modify it, to include support attainable housing, and then you could say, you know, possibly including but not limited to.
Okay, yeah, that
you know.
works.
Okay, that's a good suggestion to put it in there. Okay,
I'm so sorry to do this.
no, go ahead.
I had one thing
You're
that
on a
kind of
roll.
stuck out to me when I was reading the agriculture section, in that our first couple of objectives are really focused on oh, well, guiding the development of agriculture, and we obviously clarified, like, we want to conserve agriculture first. But there are objectives later that talk about conserving agriculture, and so I'm wondering, could we just move the conservation ones up to be the first objective?
Oh, so just reorder them?
Yeah.
Right, that's fine.
That's a good idea.
And the ways in which we're supporting the agriculture community come first, and then the conversions, which we know happen.
It makes sense
later.
because you chose to amend the land use introduction to move conservation with more emphasis. So that makes sense, yeah, that's consistent. We can do that, right?
I like it.
Well, on the housing subsidies, there are two things that I would like, if we're going to talk about it, I think there are two things that ought to be included. One is there's a wide variety of subsidies that are available and that are in use. I mean, most affordable housing in this state is produced not by cash grants, but by tax credits from the federal government, and which are used as the equity for the project, and make it achievable. But things like Habitat for Humanity's instruction to new homeowners on how to be a productive homeowner is a subsidy from an economist's perspective. And so it goes from education to outright grants through low interest loans and dozens of other things. And so it should be made clear that we aren't talking about the government going out and building some basic housing and giving it to people cheap. We're talking about a wide variety of strategies, only some of which may be appropriate to McHenry County. And the second point is that the single-family detached home is not attainable except for the top maybe 30% of the population, because the price has gone up so much in relation to incomes that a family making about $100,000 cannot afford a $300,000 house, which is a very basic detached single-family house today. You have to make maybe 120, 130 to do that, and that may not entirely be true in the future, and at various times in the past hasn't been, and we're looking at 30 years, so who knows, but right now it's very upside down here, and frankly more upside down than most of the rest of the country.
Right, and you make a good point. I think most people don't know the intricacies of financing around affordable housing, and it's pretty complex. I mean, there's firms that specialize just in it, and it's not a simple thing to do. If it was a simple thing to do, you'd see more of it. It's not. So what I would suggest, go back to, was it 1.7? So John, and read off 1.7 the way it is now.
Yeah, it's fair. It's a big document. It's huge. I've got it up if you want me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Get started.
My staff is lagging.
I've got it right here. Just got to get it really close to my face. Support attainable housing. Coordinate with municipalities to identify long-term funding mechanisms to develop affordable housing. McHenry County residents are facing significant challenges in accessing affordable housing. Nearly half of renters are burdened by housing costs. To address this issue, it's critical for McHenry County to collaborate closely with local municipalities to identify long-term funding solutions.
Yeah, and what I would say is long-term funding solutions, comma, possibly including and considering a type of development subsidy where appropriate.
Like that, yeah.
Right?
And also public-private.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into the, I don't want to, yeah, right, so I just want, so I'm like, so what she just read, and then at the end, not a period, but a comma, possibly including a type of development subsidy where appropriate. And so the appropriate may be private, it may be public, it's not going to be appropriate in every case, but, and it is a development subsidy. I don't want to say it's a housing subsidy. There may be some other thing that if it's a mixed use, it may be funded some other way. So I think it's got to be the consideration of a possible development subsidy where appropriate. And that covers public, private housing, whatever.
Okay, good.
I like that. I'm not gonna ask for a motion. Who says yes?
Yes.
Yes. Anybody no?
Yes.
Okay,
All right,
nice, going.
here we go. So we're through housing, we went through that already. Next is economic development. The changes, again, minor revisions to layout, nothing substantive, and then slightly revised objectives 1.2 and 2.2. So John, if you want to just read them off.
So the discussions about those two were centered around the courses offered in high school, like entrepreneurship. So yeah, we placed that under 2.2. I think it was like county are focused on treating manufacturing. Yeah, that objective was kind of like, does 1.2 fit under 2.2 or 2.2 kind of like fit under 1.2? So we moved it under 2.2.
Can you read it 2.2 off then?
Yeah.
So there was something in 1.2 that we took out and put into 2.2. So just read up 2.2 because that's the one that got revised.
I think the revisions that I made to 1.2 was probably just a minor text.
Okay.
I don't think.
Nothing of substance, it was just
I think it
fixing it?
was, what originally was discussed was we were considering it could be placed either under 1.2 or 2.2. We decided personally that it should be under 2.2, and then as I was reading through 1.2, I made a revision to like a small text.
To make
It wasn't,
it-
it wasn't like a,
So you moved something from 1.2 to 2.2, and to make 1.2 work, you had to tweak it a little bit. But can you read 2.2, because that's the one that got moved
Yep.
to?
So it's provide training in the trades, manufacturing, and healthcare sectors. Continue to coordinate with McHenry County College and area schools to educate youth on career opportunities.
So there was nothing new added to the document, just its location went from one objective to a different.
And then the text that we added to the paragraphs is additionally, high schools across the county have implemented incubator EDU courses to allow students to gain hands-on business and entrepreneurship experience. That's the text we added to.
So no real new text, just slightly shifted text. Did anybody else have anything else in economic development? Pretty straightforward, Chad, okay? The next is transportation. Again, some minor layout changes. We included the 2040 long-range transportation plan map in the chapter. And then we made revisions to objective 1.2.
That was gonna be one of my comments, was updating that with our 2050 plan maps, which I can send to KLOA after this meeting.
Perfect,
I've got it
perfect.
already. We were going through some draft maps, and I think we've settled on the final.
Awesome, thank you, that's perfect.
Yeah, this topic gets blamed on Scott. But I just read a lengthy APA memo on advanced aerial mobility, which mostly hasn't been planned for, and really I don't think is addressed at all in our chapter here, but quite clearly in the time frame of this plan is going to really completely change transportation. From drones delivering packages to telemedicine by drones and robots to air taxis and things like that. Over the next 5 years, it's going to become much more important.
Yep.
And over the next 30 years, it's going to make a dramatic change. Something that I have a young friend, a gentleman in his 20s, who is a drone pilot for Exelon. And the advances in that in the few years he's been at that are just amazing. A couple of weeks ago, he was looking at structural defects inside 15-foot thick concrete structures in nuclear power plants with a drone, which does not require invasive testing at all. It has equipment that can do that, and it can do that in environments that you would have to close down the plant to send a human in to do. He is supervising 6 pilots right now, and they have told him that each pilot replaces 8 linemen.
Yeah.
And he figures in the next 5 years that the 6 pilots will be gone, and he will be handling all of that because there'll be a computer program that tells him when there's something he really needs to look at. So from those things up to the things that carry people, it's going to completely change things. I don't think we're ready to plan for it yet, but we ought to have something in here saying that somebody ought to keep track of it and start planning for it, because it's going to change all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. We'll put that in there. We know a little bit about that. I know the gentleman who created the company called Airspace Link. They have all the proprietary FAA contracts in the United States for drone navigation and what you would call it, like air traffic controlling, or drone perspective. They're doing it for New York. They just landed the contract for New York. They're doing it for Detroit. They're the only ones doing it in the country because they're the only ones with FAA contracting. And if you picture it, and we just got asked to submit a proposal to do the zoning for drone land-based mobility locations in Dubai. Because they're going to be the first ones doing it. So Jackie Louie and I put together a proposal to do that for the city of Dubai. But if you give it an idea, he's already coordinating with like GM, Ford, to do their tier 2 and tier 3 manufacturing parts delivery to their plants. Henry Ford Hospital and the other hospitals in Detroit with organ movement and medical supplies between locations. The city's using it for police, for fire, for public works, it's being used, and they all have to go through his software licensing and routing for the city. And in a couple of years, he'll have the city done. And then that bubble of dome goes on like another several miles to do all the neighboring stuff. So it's going to start rapidly happening across the United States. And where they initially map is things cars don't. Railroad corridors, river corridors, utility power line corridors, because if a drone falls or drops something, they don't want to hit a person or a car.
Yeah.
So they fly over corridors that aren't used by people, but are established corridors. And then there are different height corridors for things 40 pounds and less, and packages above 40 pounds. And they have different limitations for routing. So you're spot on, it's coming on fast, and you're gonna start seeing it starting in the major metropolitan areas, but it's just gonna balloon out. So you're exactly right.
There's an outfit that has an FAA contract to stand up a national charging network for electric air taxis.
Yeah. It's crazy, yeah.
And they're starting to draft model ordinances for landing spaces for these things.
It's funny, we were in Dubai this year and last year. We were invited there to exhibit at GITEX.
Yeah.
It's the world's largest technology conference. And my business partner and I were there to showcase some of these immersive digital twins that we're doing for cities around the world. And the display or the company across the aisle from us was Xpeng, which is a Chinese passenger drone delivery aircraft. And they had 2 of their aircraft in the exhibit hall. The next day they were flying them around Dubai. It was super cool. So that stuff is coming. It's not as far off as you might think.
So how do we include, maybe with an asterisk,
I think it's
somehow in there? Because otherwise, it's wonderful, but it's just gone way over my head.
It's the same thing that we were doing with EVs 15 years ago. You're telegraphing awareness of an emerging technology or best practice, and the county is willing to work with partners as they come online to make sure the county is well served by these networks. So it's not actionable yet, but you're telegraphing your awareness and intent.
Yeah. Well, and ancillary to that is these things are going to require an enormous additional electric generation.
100%.
And McHenry County already has a problem with the availability of electric power in significant parts of the county, which will get in the way of development in those areas, whether residential or otherwise.
The interesting thing is, unlike EVs or unlike gas-powered things or jets or planes or helicopters is when these drones, regardless of size, come in through computer guidance and land, they land plugged into the, so if they're parked, they're charging, and the way they park in an exact super tight grid, it's not like they have a long runway.
Yeah.
They can come in like inches apart, like plug, 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 and you can just get them, so as soon as they land, they're charging. But that's
But
that's a big grid draw for electricity. Yeah. So we'll put something in there about it, but yeah, it's fascinating stuff, so.
I have a question about that. Okay, for instance, here in McHenry County, at night, we have tons of drones flying all over the place at night. Oh gosh, yeah, you wouldn't believe it. If you look outside your windows at night, there are drones all over the place. I don't think that there is a single place at any of our little airports or anything like that that are actually writing down, having a human being or who is writing down, who is that just went out? Where are they going? What are they doing?
These are these, what you're talking about drones is different than what he's
I
talking
know,
about.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that. I'm totally, I understand totally what you're talking about.
Yep.
And drones they have their use.
Yeah, but
I see
Pat,
drones have their use.
anybody can fly a private airplane anywhere they please without telling anybody. They don't have to get permission to land. They can land at any airport. They just have to make sure nobody else is landing at the same time.
Well, yeah, you want to drop off your
And they don't have to
cocaine at a small
file a
airplane.
flight plan or anything like that. So why should drones have to?
I think the thing to keep in mind is there are certain things legally established that a comprehensive plan can address. And there are some things the comprehensive plan has no footing to address. And someone's private use of like a drone, there's no place in the comprehensive plan that gives it authority to even like it, love it, hate it, do it, don't want it. It doesn't matter.
You know, everybody has to be aware though, that there is a lot of aggravation related to these. And these drones can be shot down and are at different occasions. And because there's a window where a drone can fly and not fly in terms of area. I'm just saying, all I'm doing is just saying.
Okay.
That there needs to be, why should we be the dopes that don't know what's flying over where or anything like that? No, we need to find out, who is this? Is it the Chinese? Is it the, whoever, Bugs Bunny? Whatever, who is it? Who is flying over the county? We need to know these things.
Well, there's no way we're gonna get at it through the comprehensive plan. So it may be something that somebody wants to address later, but there's no even home to address it here, so.
It just, all I can say is the idea of drones are just fine, and they can do certain things that nothing else can.
Okay.
I agree with that. However, you know what can be addressed in this plan that nobody's even brought up, when you start using drones and you start using more and more mechanical means, what does that mean? You're losing jobs. And then I have everybody turn around. I mean, I've spent years in this field. And then everybody turns around and goes, we're losing jobs all over the place. How come? Well, that's why. You have changes in what's going on just in life in general. But all those things have to be addressed. The typewriter factory's not here anymore.
Neither is the telegraph repair facility. We run into zoning ordinances all over that have use tables, that have things in them, like Oak Brook, we did their zoning a few years back. They had use tables that said a telegraph repair facility. So not a telegraph repair shop, but literally a shop that repairs telegraph machines. So yeah, you're right, there's antiquated stuff everywhere. So, but that's beyond what we need to address. We gotta keep going through the other chapters.
Right,
Yeah.
but you've got to, you have to have a backup. You have to have a backup. In the same way, the Coast Guard and the Navy has abandoned Loran, and then and they've gone totally to nothing but your electronics.
Loran is a radar tracking system, if you guys don't know.
And, yes, it had been used.
Okay, we gotta keep going.
Yeah, we gotta keep going though.
We gotta keep going.
Well, that's what happened, you know what, that's exactly what's happened at other meetings too.
What?
Go ahead and go.
Well, it's just that we've got like 11 chapters to go through. And if we want to circle back.
Go ahead and go.
If we want to circle back as a committee to talk about any one of these things, we can. So
No, I
it's at
said,
the,
go ahead and go.
so it's at the committee's direction.
Talk.
Any other changes to transportation?
I just want to say it's good that we use the objectives from our transportation plan.
Yep.
But they're your sort of recommendations, right? So I think there's a lot of overlap between what we did and what you did. But this is truly your plan, not DOT's, which I think is kind of the objective we set out to do, so.
But they dovetail, they're not.
They do,
yeah,
they
and
talk to
that's-
one another. There's nothing that's misaligned between here and what we have in our plan.
Good.
And it is wonderful that they are coordinated because they never have been before.
It's a first. All right, the next thing is water resources. And again, I would say I've worked on, not exaggerating, hundreds of comprehensive plans across the country. This is the most robust water chapter I've seen in a comprehensive plan. So the folks that worked on this did a phenomenal job. So again, a few minor layouts. We updated the introduction image and we addressed some additional text revisions, but there was nothing of substance that was suggested by the committee and nothing of substance that we saw needed to be changed. It was just very minor editing and or formatting stuff. So, okay. Green infrastructure, same thing, pretty thorough chapter, minor adjustments to layout and minor adjustments to text, but nothing of substance.
Is there a place to mention the huge addition to Hackmatack by Fish and Wildlife? Because they just bought 1,000 acres.
They bought 985 acres?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
That's amazing.
I've been following that.
If we can get some intel on it, we can include a paragraph of text or something about it, sure. I don't know about it, so, but.
Yeah, it's just
And
recent.
there's
Elizabeth just put it out.
yeah, I was gonna say we have some kind of
Okay.
report went out.
But I think that's a pretty robust environmental
Well,
or
it's
infrastructure.
adjacent to Glacial Park, which is the biggest park in the
For
county.
the county.
It was the largest acquisition in the last 35 years or so.
Okay.
Tamarack Farms.
Yeah,
Right.
That's where it was.
it's Richmond.
Okay.
But,
So if everybody supports that, we'll work with you to get appropriate text for it from wherever it comes from, and we'll get that inserted in the plan.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's big news, that's huge. That's good. That's a lot. All right, energy infrastructure, and I think this is where if we want to, so again, real minor stuff, we updated the solar farms map, some minor adjustments, and in the discussion of solar, if we want to put the thing in there, what was the terminology about making sure that, decommissioning is handled and blah, blah, blah. If we want to make sure that solar farm decommissioning, make sure that all the equipment and whatever is removed, we can make that addition. That was discussed earlier at this meeting, so.
No,
I have one question. So, I mean, if we're thinking about all different forms of clean energy, I think that there's one that's probably been left out, and that's nuclear. Now that the state has lifted the moratorium on some small-scale nuclear plants, I think that it's a viable alternative, and it is clean energy that we should consider supporting. Not necessarily that it would be located in McHenry County, but support of it as an industry for our energy needs.
I would agree with that completely.
Yeah, I do too, my vote
And,
doesn't count,
I
but
mean,
I couldn't agree more, yeah.
Yeah, modern reactors are far safer than the ones we have here. And they have fuel rods that are dangerous for 100 years, not 200,000 years.
Yeah.
And you can actually contain something for 100 years, whereas you cannot for 100,000 years.
I mean, compared to fossil fuels or so many other things,
SMRs.
the utility of nuclear technology now is phenomenal. If I was president, I'd have those things all over the place. I mean, you talk about it being a clean energy source that could really eliminate a lot of the carbon emissions for a nation.
And they work at night.
After the election.
Yeah, right. And when you're talking about, whether it's drones or EVs or all these other things that are gonna begin pulling more and more and more off the grid, even more important, so, okay. So we'll put something in there about, we'll work with you on the language, just to make sure it's correct about the inclusion, about sort of supporting the consideration of.
If the.
Yeah, if the.
No, I think
that's a good idea.
Okay. I don't know if you want to officially ask for amendments,
Been
yeah.
asking for votes all night, Mary.
I move that we support that.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Anybody not in favor? Pat, are you in favor?
I said yes.
Oh, I didn't see. You weren't looking at me, and you weren't smiling, so I wouldn't know. It's okay. Yes.
And we need a motion about the decommissioning language for.
There's decommissioning language in all of the zoning petitions that come through that talk about what to do that we have already in place for the zoning board.
I would just add that the county board has no control over any language above and beyond what the state has put
That
into
is
their
correct.
wind and solar bill. If we add it, would certainly be sued.
Correct.
Well, I suggest you.
But you can
I mean, it's
mention,
a consideration that the landowners should work into their contracts with these solar companies,
Yes.
but it's nothing that we would have control over.
and it's already in there as part of the state
I think
stuff.
what we might say is that we would support changes in state law to permit more robust decommissioning rules.
Very good.
Or you could just say you support decommissioning of blah, 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 and just say you support it. You're not mandating, not
Responsible
requiring it.
decommissioning.
You support responsible decommissioning of whatever.
Yeah.
Solar field infrastructure, there you go. All right.
And how much money is gonna be put aside?
$12.
But they're gonna have to have some sort of,
Whatever the state says.
well,
No, it's whatever the state says.
yes,
Yeah,
but it has to
right.
be a lot, as long as, we know that.
All right, the next one is historic preservation. Now, photo? Charming? Better, okay. Again, minor chapter layouts, we incorporated new photos throughout based on suggestions, and we updated the map to make sure that we had a few comments on corrections to the map. So again, nothing of substance, just corrections. Last chapter is implementation. Implementation talks about sort of how the plan can be implemented over time. These things are not going to, this is a comprehensive plan. It's a 20-year document. These are not things that are all going to get done in a year or 5 years, 10 years, or maybe never. But they are things the county and their partners want to begin to strive toward. So it is long-term. So it talks about how these things can be implemented over time. We identify potential partners. This is not going to all fall on the backs of the county. Clearly, you've got municipal partners, you've got utility partners, you've got other agencies, DOT, you've got neighboring counties, there's other agencies you can work with. We identify preliminary some economic development tools to help identify grants and funding sources for a lot of these recommendations, and then some estimated time for some of these actions or recommendations as well. So these aren't hard and fast, but it can help the county make informed decisions over time to begin to start moving the needle on some of these things by breaking them down into their individual parts. Taken in total, it can be overwhelming, right? So you gotta sort of break it down into, how do I get this done? So this is what this chapter does.
Near term, midterm, far term.
Exactly right, yep. So we identify all the different economic development tools, federal funding tools, grants, applications, funding mechanisms. The way most funding works, I'm sure everybody here knows it, is there's a pool of funding for transportation projects, there's a pool of funding for environmental projects, there's a pool of funding for pedestrian projects, there's a pool of funding for, water. There's the way funding works at the state and federal level is it's geared toward a type of action or a type of project or a type of issue. So we try to identify these in that manner in this document. So that is a quick review of all the chapters. We've incorporated all the feedback that we got before. We identified those changes based off our last meeting. We'll make all the changes that you approved by call vote as we went through the chapters today.
Carolyn had.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in when Michelle said back to ag, and then you went to housing. So
Sorry about that.
That's all right. So just two things. And I do like the revision of the order, because I was kind of hung up on that myself, so I'm glad you mentioned that. But, all right, well, the first thing on 1.3, you have down there organizations that can help with technical assistance. Right, you've got different plans or whatever. The first one listed is the McHenry County Conservation Foundation, like somebody you would turn to for expertise. Given that you've got the soil and water district there, I would put the conservation district. I mean, we're a supporting foundation. I don't think anybody should call me for technical advice. And I think the district has the scientists there. They're gonna be the ones you want.
So not the foundation, but the district, all right?
Okay. Though the foundation did help with the purchase, so I just want you to know.
Okay.
Of Tamarack Farms. Anyway, so down and on to page, that's not your page 16, just a second. Okay, so 4.2. And the only thing there, and unless somebody else already caught it and told you, on 4.2, there's just the one full paragraph. At the very bottom, it says the program could prioritize and/or further incentivize Century Farms and other significant McHenry County cultural and historical resources to fresh, healthy foods, contribute to patient health and the student learning environment. I have no idea what that's saying. It seems like, because there's an extra space in there, and I don't think that something's wrong.
Is there,
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me, is there a word missing in there, or?
I don't.
Hallie? Go ahead.
We revised it. Do you want us to read
Yeah.
what we have now?
Yeah, that'd be great.
The program, the last sentence, the programs could prioritize and or further incentivize Century Farms and other significant McHenry County cultural and historical resources. That's it. So we revised that sentence.
Oh, you mean
Is that
after
what
historical resources, that's what you added? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what you're.
Are we talking about 4.2?
The very last sentence in
Yeah.
4.2. Can you read that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The programs could prioritize and or further incentivize Century Farms and other significant McHenry County cultural and historical resources.
Period.
Yep.
All right, so you're leaving off the end.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and the only other thing, I'm just wondering, because you talk about low impact design in terms of how to kind of when you're converting, if you have to convert. I know we talk about conservation design. What is, and you actually define both of those. Does it, given the fact that we have such a robust conservation design program, is that the wording that we're going for? Or, I mean, is there a reason to use low impact design versus conservation design that we actually already have as, part of our ordinance?
Sorry, can you repeat that question, Kathleen?
She was asking if there's a need to have both low impact design and conservation design. We define both, but conservation design is already firmly established in McHenry County in the ordinance. So do we need to introduce the notion of low impact design, or is it basically the same?
Because they could be different, and you do define them. There's slightly different to them. But we already have a kind of a really good program in place, so just wondering.
I believe throughout the chapters, I'm not sure which chapter specifically it is, but I think low impact design is actually one of the recommendations that we have written out. So that's located somewhere else, and that's probably why we kind of mention it throughout, but we also mention conservation design, because I think once you actually look at them as two separate things, they are indeed separate, but we do understand that you do have conservation design currently, but we are addressing that as well as another recommendation.
So I think both of them need to be in it.
Okay.
Conservation
If that's
design
Yeah.
can be the design principle for large-scale development or anything. Whereas low-impact development could be how you promote permeable surfaces. Right? It can get that granular, whereas conservation design might not.
Is not that, right?
Okay,
That's fair.
got it, that's fair.
That's fair. Good.
Thank you.
All right, so next steps is to continue to make revisions to the remaining plan. We'll make the revisions discussed this evening. We'll revise the action matrix and glossary based on feedback from this committee. And we will prepare for April open house and public meeting, public hearing. We haven't got those dates set yet, but we're shooting to do it next month. So I think one of the things we need tonight is, this is the last time this group will be meeting, is to a motion to recommend this draft for consideration by the county at a public hearing, subject to making the changes that were discussed and approved this evening. So what goes forward reflects what was talked about tonight.
Madam Chairman, I move
What he said?
what he said.
There you go. I'll second it. There we go. Any questions? Anybody just want to keep coming every month so we can get more candy and cookies and
Quick question.
Bunnies. Quick question about the timeline for the revisions.
Right.
How far in advance of the public hearing will we see to double check and make sure that everything made it?
I mean, how long did turn around the revisions that we heard this evening?
Should be, like, we can do it next week.
Yeah, so we'll get it back to you next week. You'll have plenty of time to review it, take a look at it. And that is the one that will go to the public open house. That'll be the public hearing draft. It goes to the public hearing. If any changes are made as a result of the, so if we have the public open house, we'll record comments. We won't make changes based on that. When we go to public hearing, we can say, here's the feedback we got at the open house. Then if the county wants to make changes based on what the open house comments came in, they can. So we'll record and we'll bring those forward. We won't proactively change the draft because of open house comments. The county can give us that direction at the public hearing.
So that's going to be the county board, or the departments?
Correct.
Okay. Melissa? Last but not least.
I don't necessarily want to be last. I just have a question about the themes and whether or not, because I see a couple of additional opportunities that I would argue are public health. Some areas like in water quality, some other areas. So I wasn't sure how big of a deal that is for everybody if you put another little
Public health. No, that's a deal. That's.
Oh, you
I'll
mean
go
like-
through, yeah, like as identifying that's a cross-cutting
Oh, that's fine,
theme.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And if you look at, and this is the only thing I would say is, I think, like everybody else, I think that's a good idea. You can sort of get to the point where almost everything cross-pollinates with
I know,
everything else. We want to be
Not overly,
a little
it'll just.
bit, yeah, a little bit disciplined to like
Yeah.
really call out the key things, but if you think we missed some, for sure flag them, yeah.
Mary, I have a question.
Oh, Garrett.
At what point do we review and insert the action plan part of it?
Waiting for everybody to have a chance to review it and give us comments on that and the glossary. So if we can get your comments back by the end of next week, we'll make those changes and incorporate them.
And thank you, Garrett, for putting it into page by page for us. The way it was
I
printed,
didn't-
or the way you were
Didn't
looking
change a single
at it.
word, I just
Yeah.
squished it.
Yeah.
So another recommendation that you could present to the group if you want. When I've done lots of plans like this, two things that I'm usually looking for is what are the key themes, and we did that, we took care of some key themes, and I want to make sure that everybody thinks these are fitting in those key themes, right? First of all. Second of all, is there any way to provide input, maybe as we all provide input to Renee or whoever we're giving our input to, on what are the really, really important ones or the really big action goals that we want to make. If somebody asks us, what's this plan all about? We can say, here's 2 or 3 really big goals that we want to achieve as a county. Is there a way to also provide feedback, or do you think it's a good idea that we could also provide feedback on, a couple of these that we think are the big ones?
Prioritizing
Yeah.
something.
Really good example, when we did our downtown plan for the city of Woodstock, we set 4 pillars that were kind of our main themes, kind of like that. But then if somebody says, what's the one really big goal of that plan? It's doubling the number of residential units within a quarter mile of the train station downtown. That's the one big goal. So we've got one that we can point to that says, that's the deal. I'm wondering if there's space for some prioritization in this.
Well, I think we've been kind of doing that as we've been going through this in moving our chapters around to where it's important and what we're doing. So it could.
Can I help clarify?
Yeah.
Are you talking about changing the structure of the document, or are you talking about like talking points and how we sell this?
Yeah, just the goals and the talking points, and as we're going through these, not the chapters, but the action plans.
Okay.
Is there some action items that we think are the key action items that we want to make sure we get done as a county?
A suggestion is maybe that is when the draft is referred to the county for consideration at a public hearing, maybe it's accompanied by a memorandum from the steering committee that identifies, and as a result of discussion upon the final draft, the committee had consensus around these 5 things being the most important, or the things they wanted to emphasize, or maybe it's in an accompanying memorandum as opposed to being codified somewhere in the document. I don't know. Right.
Yeah, because there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 objectives and 200 action items. So is there a way to say what are the really key ones that we really want to focus on when somebody asks us what the plan is?
The elevator pitch.
What's the elevator pitch?
30 seconds to explain this to somebody, what's really the most important.
And the themes help. The theme is a easy way to give that answer in a concise way, but also the goals.
I don't know what to say.
Well, I guess.
Question on the table of adoption or acceptance with the changes. You need to vote.
Yeah, so right now there's a motion to recommend that the draft be sent to a public hearing with the recommendation and endorsement of this group, subject to the, so before there's a motion to do that, subject to the changes, making the changes we talked about this evening.
Right.
So there's a motion and a second for that, but no vote was called.
Well then, I guess, all in favor of that?
Aye.
Any nays? Good.
Great work.
And then the follow-up was his question about, does this group want to identify the big 5 or whatever, either in the document or as a message to the board to consider?
Not to overcomplicate it, Mary, I'm just saying, if our task next is to give feedback to Renee, just be thinking about that as we go through this. What are the really big ones that we want to make sure to emphasize?
And I am going to make a suggestion, and we can have a motion or not have a motion, but one recommendation that I've been talking about since day one is, I can't remember what I had for breakfast or when I started drinking this, but we're talking about going out for 20 years. You're gonna have the next people come in and have to do what we did? I don't think so. I think the better way to go is to have a permanent plan commission that reviews the updates, like maybe 4 times a year. Just a small group to say, do we need to revise something? Is there something we have to look at? Is there something going on that we didn't plan? The drones, for instance, or all that kind of thing that we didn't check on, we didn't see for 20 years, or it's coming up tomorrow and we were thinking it was going to come up 5 years from now, so that we have a group that's always on top of it. So 10 years from now or 15 years from now, when a group has to come, a commission is done and we have to get going, that we aren't reinventing the wheel.
If I can, I think I just asked Sue John while you were talking. I think that, and I don't have it in front of me, I think that's in the implementation recommendation
Good,
chapter, that there be more regular review and updates of this document incrementally as opposed to just a 20-year.
Okay, as long
Is that
as
in
it's
there?
in there?
Yeah, there's a heading, just says update the plan regularly, and then it has.
It talks about just that.
Okay.
I would say, I mean, it's from a county board perspective and a PED committee, that an annual update, I think that would be adequate. I mean, you have 20 updates over the next 20 years.
Yep.
Quarterly, it sounds like a little bit of.
That's a lot.
A little bit of overkill. You
Okay.
can see what action items have been checked, what we need to work towards through PED committee, an annual review of some sort.
Annual is good. Some states, it's about 8 states that require a 5-year review as part of their enabling acts. But there's only about 5 or 8 states that do that on a 5-year requirement. But a 1-year, in cities where I've worked, a 1-year review by staff working with the plan commission brought to the board, say, hey, here's a few tweaks, or we looked at it, it looks good, here's something that's emerging, we'll address it next year if it becomes something, but just, so it's not such a Herculean lift every 20 years to sort of keep it up to speed. So I think an annual review is perfect. And it's in the implementation chapter already.
Okay, as long as it's there. I
Yep.
just want to make sure that they know.
Yeah.
No, that you were talking about. There's always things that we need to do to make sure that we have a record of what we've actually talked about, which is why tonight I went through motion, because who says,
But that's almost always, that's why I asked, it's almost always something we put in the implementation. The first thing in the implementation chapter is regular review and update of the plan.
Okay.
Mary, do you want to talk about dates for the open house and policy?
Well, we're going to do them in April, right? So this would end up going to the county board when?
Well, you weren't available for that April date.
Yeah, we may need to not do that tonight, but check our calendars.
Okay.
It's not, you're all more than welcome to come to the open house. You don't have to, you've lived this for 2 years. And the open house is typically like a 3-hour window in the afternoon from, let's say, 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock or 3 to 6 to give people time to come in, look at boards, ask us questions. It's very informal. Your support of the public hearing would be, of course, fantastic. But again, you've endured this. You're not required to come to those 2. So it's really about looking at our schedules and your schedules.
This group actually holds the public.
I'm sorry?
This group.
This group holds the public hearing? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe discuss
We're figuring that out. That's the topic of discussion.
Not everybody, because
Hopefully not
if we
Monday.
have to come up with something and say, hey, you guys want to come and help, it would be nice, kind of like the county fair, and see what we do. But let me discuss it with you guys. and
Yeah,
planning
yeah, right,
development.
I think we also want to try to get this, and I know there's interest from the PED committee to see it.
Right.
So we have to line up a couple different dates, a couple different types of meetings for them.
Okay, I'm going to leave it executive decision. I'm
Yeah.
leaving it up to you guys to figure out those dates.
Okay.
Yeah, like the
Because
week of the
it goes
5th,
to
the week of the,
P&D.
and again, I don't have to be there, I guess, unless you guys want me to be. I
We
would-
want you there.
I would
we
want
go
to
the
be.
county board.
Yeah, like I would want to be there. So the week of the 15th, I'm not, that's a little soon, right, so, which is good because I'm not available that weekend.
So we can go the 22nd or 29th in those weeks,
Well, we had talked about using the April date that I reserved.
which would have been the April
public hearing.
25th.
But they aren't available for that
Okay,
date.
so let's
So we'll
talk
have
about
to
that and we'll advise
find
you
another
guys,
date.
maybe I don't want to say noodle it, I hate noodles. But we can come up with something and say, you want to help out, you want to come to it, we'll advise you before we advise anybody else to get those kind of things together. And do it as quickly as we can so we can get it to P&D, because P&D meets the first Tuesday of the month. So if we go with the if we go with the 25th for those, we aren't even going to be able to get it to P&D until
Right.
May, June.
Yeah, it would be June if we.
And then go to the county board as soon as we can after that. Okay. to wait that long, but
Yeah,
that's, government is government.
Nobody wants
Waited
to,
this long.
yeah, nobody wants to artificially push it out, but I also don't want to feel like we're,
Rushing it.
ambushing the residents by jamming something, for them to think we're going too fast.
And we had tried to talk about getting this done by March.
Yeah.
That we're into March and that's for us. And after that, having it go 3 more months is, considering where we've come from the beginning until now, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your patience, particularly with me. I come here and I work it out, and then I have ideas, and then I work on those ideas, and you've all been very considerate of me, and I do appreciate it very much, because I don't really want this to be the last time. What I would like, and I'll mention it now, is when we do get down to the county board, that we'd like to make sure as many of you can make it, because that would go to, which one would be better? No, county board is at night, that's the better one to.
It'll be going to PED before it goes to.
Yes, I understand that, but that's first thing in the morning, and most people here have a job. So we can't I'll be there.
Right, well, committee of the whole is in the morning before the
Right,
Tuesday.
committee of the whole is in the
meeting.
morning, and then the actual,
Voting meeting is at 7 PM on
and
third Tuesday.
when it goes to the committee of the whole, it will be streamed, so you can watch it. Because it's a 9 o'clock, 9:30, 9 o'clock.
All of our meetings are streamed.
Yeah, and so they're streamed so you can see because we're not the final. We can say everything that we want to say here and we can all be in agreement, but there are 18 people who have to decide this. And of those 18, we need 10. No, 18? Yeah, 10, at least. So there may be.
We're going for 18.
Oh, I've been trying to do that and make it as compatible as I can so that there will be the fewest number of people who have other than a voice, just a voice that says what, but to find the context and to know what we're talking about. So, and if, we'll see where it goes from there. So.
We'll get the schedule figured out, we'll keep you in the loop. Thanks everybody on this committee, you guys have done a phenomenal job. It's nice to work with a group that actually reads what is prepared. Always discouraging when you get to a meeting, you see people with their pencil opening up the manila envelopes with their packets at the meeting. I know that never happens up here, but that's always frustrating. But you guys read it, you had good insight, we made changes in response. I think it makes the plan way better. Makes it more McHenry. Your fingerprints are all over this thing, which I think is what it should be. Mary, thank you for your chairmanship. You did a great job, not an easy job. You did a really good job. So from our perspective, thanks. It made our job easier to get the feedback we did. So with that, from our team, thanks so much. You guys did a fantastic job. So.
And we will party.
Yes, give yourself a second.
Awesome, yeah, thank you.
So,
Motion to adjourn.
we got it under,
Yeah.
we got it under 2 hours to go.
Caroline, how many people do you anticipate coming to these, coming to the,
Open house.
open house, review? How many people do you figure on